Hello, everybody, and welcome to Sparring Partners. This is Monica Paolini from Senza Fili, and today I have Nigel Wallbridge, the founder and director of Vivent Biosignals, a company based in Switzerland. What we're going to talk about today is agriculture and plants, actually, more than, I guess, plants more than agriculture. And, I always talk about how connectivity is pervasive. And I think this is an example because when we think about connectivity, we think about people first, and then we think about sensors, drones, but here we're going one step deeper because we're not monitoring agriculture, we're monitoring plants. And it's interesting because I've known Nigel for a very long time. I don't want to know how long. And we started to work on Wi-Fi on trains. And at the time, it was nothing. I mean, now we take it for granted. You go on a train, you have Wi-Fi. In fact, you take for granted that you have Wi-Fi pretty much everywhere. At the time, it wasn't. It was a big challenge. And, I would say that Nigel was one of the people that actually got to the point where we can have Wi-Fi on trains. But I'm a little bit biased because I really like Nigel. So what can I say? So I'm going to stop here and I'm going to get Nigel to introduce himself and tell us how he went from trains to plans. Nigel, over to you.
Thank you, Monica. What a great pleasure to connect with you again after these years and have a chance to talk about these topics. You're absolutely right. I was working on Wi-Fi on trains, and we really thought that there was an important need for connectivity for passengers on trains, but we were also interested in the idea of interconnecting the trains themselves with networks. They were isolated islands of information, and we thought we should find a way of connecting into the train systems. And I remember it's very, very clearly 2013. I was running a training course for Nomad Digital. That was the company we were building in Wi-Fi. And we ran a course on CAN bus. I don't know, are you a CAN bus person,
What was
Monica?
that?
CAN bus was invented by Robert Bush. It's the network inside cars.
Mm-hmm.
And the brilliant thing about it is, and I've written an article about this recently, the brilliant thing is the engineers who designed CAN bus said, don't give a car a brain. Don't give a car a brain. All we need is a piece of wire that connects everything, and everything goes onto the same piece of wire. And then you can get very sophisticated behavior from a distributed system. I was sitting in this meeting, going through this, really at this level, this kind of conceptual view of what a CAN bus was. And I thought to myself, 2013, oh my goodness, that's how biology works. That's how biology works. Decisions are made in a distributed way by millions of cells. And the ultimate behavior of the plant comes from the aggregated, distributed behavior of these millions of decision makers. And I think that's just such a I couldn't do anything about it for a few years. We had to finish off the Wi-Fi and trains business. But as soon as we finished that, we thought, let's have a go at these networks. And it's a communication problem. It's exactly maybe not always telecommunications. It may not be always wireless, but it is communications between cells.
Yeah, and I guess that you can raise a very sort of philosophical point here of, it's communication, it's information. It's
Yes,
just that, now in telecoms, we think about networks. Clearly, that's what we work on every day. But it's like a really much wider thing. And actually, there is the whole thing about consciousness and panpsychism that not only it's information, but even things like consciousness. So
yes,
there is the thing about, obviously we are conscious. We know that. We don't know what being conscious means, but we know we are conscious. But there is a question of are animals conscious? And yes, probably they are. And
yes,
then there is now, lately, people are starting discussing, are plants conscious? What does conscious
yes.
mean for plants. So I think that, we should, we should move from this kind of human centric, network centric. It's just like, it's universe.
Yes. Well,
So I think that that's a very interesting direction you're moving, and it makes a lot of sense.
so I think networks are becoming, I think, well, obviously, um, neurobiology, the question of nerves and brains,
Mm.
there's a huge area of activity in there. But if you look at a plant, it manages to, it does everything a human being does. It's born, it gains energy from the environment, it reproduces, it heals wounds, it reproduces. It does all of those things without a brain, and it does it because it's a network. It's a network of stuff, and if your listeners come away with one thought from our talk today, I hope it's the thought that these networks, the network inside a leaf, is just so sophisticated. We tend to think of plants as passive and static and not doing very much. But let me ask you a question, Monica. When a cloud comes across in front of the sun, does the leaf adjust its behavior, or does it just sit there and wait for the sun to come out? Well, obviously, the leaf that adjusts, the leaf that communicates internally and says, what are we going to do about this, will succeed in an evolutionary sense. And it's because of the flow of information. Now, the telecoms industry is really at the forefront of these ideas about shifting information around. And so I felt, obviously, I came into agriculture and plant biology extremely naive, and there were many, many things I had to learn. But telecoms and this idea of networking and information flows, uh, they have something important to contribute in this new world.
Yeah. Well, I guess you could also argue that having a brain is just an accident of evolution. I mean,
Yes.
because when you look at an AI model, which is very smart, doesn't have a brain, doesn't mean that it's not, it just is it's convenient that we have a brain and animals have a brain.
Yes.
But
Yes,
it depends
exactly.
on how, it is actually the network in the brain that makes us intelligent, conscious, and whatever.
Yes.
No, it's not the other way around. It's just that
Yes, I
it's just like having a GPU versus whatever. It's just having, is the hardware that supports the network.
yes. So all of this um intellectual underpinning that telecoms has developed, and really from Claude Shannon onwards, all that has something to say about the way that biology works. Now we've tended to focus on plants, and the reason for that was quite simple. It's easy to work on plants. They sit there. Nobody protests if you kill a plant, whereas you can't do that with animals. Working with bugs is difficult. Working with tumors is difficult. Uh, Working with biofilms is difficult. But all of these multicellular biological systems are networked devices, and so we focused on plants. But understanding how information flows in these things is critical to moving forward to understanding biology.
Yeah. And also, it's not just the process information. So it's not that they're reacting to the sun, but they also develop stress. They
Yeah,
suffer.
of course.
They are happy. I mean, I'm a gardener, so I know when I'm doing something good for the plant and when I'm not.
Yes. Yes.
And so it's not like clearly it's not like having a pet where it's a different type of relationship. But yes, I mean it's a plant. It's not a cat.
Yes.
But there is this kind of relationship, and they do have. Wait, is it feelings now? But they do react. It's not just processing information, which I guess
Well,
this is something that our networks don't do or don't do yet.
well, I don't know. Is that true, Mark? If you look at social networks, they do develop these macro behaviors
Hmm.
from micro incidents. And I think um, there's the work of Schelling on segregation in society, and this idea that small behaviors at the micro level can lead to massive macro behaviors. And you see that in plants. You see that when the sunflower turns to face the sun.
They all do
Yeah,
it.
yeah. I mean, that wasn't the nobody made the decision to turn to the sun. Millions, hundreds of millions of cells all behaved in a way which resulted in this macro behavior. And I think, and so we see this in telecoms. Well, we see this in social networks quite a lot. And I think it's a very interesting aspect of modern society that we have and developed communications technologies which communicate millions of people in a way that's never happened before. And I
Hmm.
think that this is leading to systemic changes in society that need understanding.
Absolutely, and plants might help us.
Yeah, and
Okay,
we
so
can
let's go
we can
back.
learn
Let's
a
go
lot
back
from
to.
plants. Yeah, we can
I
learn
think
from plants.
we can
Yeah.
talk a lot about the social implications, but
Yes.
let's just go back to plants.
Yes.
So, okay, for everybody out there, probably they have not come across what you guys do. So
Yes.
why don't you give like some introduction? Because this what you're doing is not trivial. You're not
Yeah.
just monitoring the temperature or the humidity.
No.
You're
No.
doing something much deeper.
Yes.
Tell us.
Okay, so I'm holding up to show Monica a device which
Hmm.
which looks awfully like a walkie-talkie,
Hmm.
and it's got an antenna on the top, and it's got it's kind of got the aesthetics of a GoPro, and this is the device that we stick in a greenhouse or in a field or next to a grapevine, and we plug two wires into the plant and we start recording voltages. We're just recording voltages. And then we
Hmm.
take those voltages, transmit them up to the cloud. And then obviously there's some telecoms technology involved there, which I think we'll come back to. We take them up to the cloud. Then we have machine learning algorithms which look at these signals and interpret them and say, this plant is short of water, or this plant is short of nitrogen, or this plant is reacting to a disease like mildew. And then we take those metrics, we take those resultant indices, and we present them to farmers so farmers can know before the leaf wilts or before it develops symptoms of a disease, they can see how the plant is behaving in real time and can adapt the conditions to help the plant thrive.
Now let me ask you this. I used to do neurophysiology on
Yes,
animals, not on plants.
yes,
So
yes,
just stick the electrode in the brain.
yeah,
But depending on where you are on the brain and depending on the animal you're
yes,
working on, the
yes,
answer is the electric signal is completely different. So
yes.
is the tomato plant going to be different from a bean plant?
No, I mean, it turns out that no, which I think we were very lucky.
Okay, that's a good thing. That's easy. That's easy. That's one
Yeah,
thing where when
yeah.
dimensions where plants are actually easier.
The interce and well, I think it's very interesting. The intercellular language that cells use in plants seem to have a great deal of commonality. And I
Mhm.
think in human beings, I'm not sure we haven't done the work yet to look at the commonality between intercellular signaling in plants and let's say wound healing in in human beings. When you bruise your arm or when you cut your arm, your brain has no involvement in uh, in healing that wound. That is done by the cells in that location
Mhm. Mhm.
suddenly getting together, forming a network, exchanging information, and saying, "Okay, we have to get on and heal this thing."
Yeah.
And so I think these mechanisms of intercellular signaling, I think that there will be commonality with plants. Obviously, we know that different ions are involved and different. It's basically an electrochemical networking process. But I do think that this understanding intercellular flows, which are separate from from nerves and brains. I think you've made a very good point about
Well, what about
brain. Yeah.
mushrooms? Because mushrooms are not really plants.
No, we have some of our customers have measured mushrooms. It's not something that we've studied in detail, but you look at the speed at which those things grow, and then suddenly they make this decision to have this fruiting body appear. The thing that we eat, the mushroom that we eat, just appears in a matter of hours. It's incredible the speed of these things.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so you record from the signal from plants. Can you
Yes.
tell us, and you have the device there. Can you tell us about how you got to do it, how you analyze the data, and how you use it?
Yes. Sure. So let's do the nuts and bolts first. So as we say, we've got our walkie-talkie. It's connected to the plant. It's sitting next to the plant in a field anywhere in the world, and we need to get the signals back to the algorithms are this is a new field and the algorithms are changing. So we couldn't really do all the algorithm processing at the edge of the network. We wanted to bring the data into the middle where we could try different algorithms. We've recorded 1.7 million plant days of recordings now. We record generally somewhere between one sample a second and 256 samples per second. So you can see the telecoms kind of feel it's definitely slow compared to telecoms, but that's a subject I also want to come back to. So quite large amounts of data. We generally choose to communicate from the plant. So from the plant device, from the walkie-talkie to a gateway, we tend to use LoRa, or we might use Wi-Fi, and then from the gateway we either use Ethernet, or sometimes we use 4G, and we bring it back into AWS as our cloud service provider. And then next question: how did we get the algorithms? Well, we just did experiments. We were very fortunate. Lots of support from the Swiss government. They gave us a big greenhouse to work with in the early days. We took tomato plants, we denied them, let's say, calcium. Then you've got a set of signals for calcium deprived plants and a set of signals for for non-deprived plants. Throw it at a machine learning algorithm, and bingo, you've got an algorithm for determining whether your plant has a shortage of calcium.
So you need AI to do this, because maybe it's the kind of thing that there are some specific markers, so that a
Yes,
plant that has little calcium, like for humans, you don't need
yes,
AI to tell you if you have diabetes.
yes,
You
yes,
just do
yes,
the test. So is that something similar, or?
yes. I think so. It's definitely true that if let's say we were running our calcium deprived experiment, the plant is subject to all kinds of other stresses. So the signals are apparently noisy. But another way of looking at it is just saying there's all kinds of other information in there as well. And I think it's true that the plants are using a form of frequency division multiplexing. They are passing some information quite quickly. Water shortage, the model for water shortage has a window of a minute. The window for calcium deprivation or nitrogen deprivation may be 24 hours. So different timescales of interest in the signals, and so it's a complicated signal. It's a bit like tapping. If you could just pull the Wi-Fi out of the air, if you could just pull the Wi-Fi out of the air and record that, and that's a good analogy to what we're doing. What can you tell? Well, it's pretty hard. The spread spectrum going on. But there are things you can tell. Is it active right now? Is there a lot of Wi-Fi right now, or a little Wi-Fi? And that's useful information if you're trying to understand this alien language.
So, and basically, I guess that's why you need to have a sampling rate in the order of 1 second or even
Ye-
less. It's
yes,
because you need to kind of separate the noise from, and
yes,
you can
exactly.
have different. So it's not just in this experiment you just look at calcium, but you can have all sorts of potential sources of
Yes,
whatever. You
yes,
want to have a picture of the plant, not just calcium.
Yes, exactly, exactly. So we have it all, and then it's really quite a big data processing challenge to it's quite a big data processing challenge to pick out the timescale of interest that that you
Mhm.
want to use. But then as you start, and so we're going to be picking apart this database for you. This database is full of useful information. And we've just started to learn the first few words in there. There's lots more to come.
And I guess that, this is what I tell people all the time that if you have a model in telecoms, you need to have good data to get good results. And I guess in
Yeah,
your case too, you build a database. So you're not starting from scratch the next time you go to a different
exactly.
place. So the model has learned something and then you
Yes,
can reuse it. So you don't go start from scratch with a new plant or a new place or whatever.
exactly, exactly. So our penetration of agricultural markets is trivial. We have hundreds of customers. Maybe we must be approaching 1,000 customers. A mixture of farms and a mixture of farms and large corporations. Uh, Syngenta is our biggest customer,
Mhm.
and but the database builds up all the time. And then a new customer comes in and says, look, we want to study bananas. And we say, fine, we'll plug
You
into the
just try
bananas
that.
and everything, we're not exact. They may be interested in a new disease, and there are lots of interesting diseases in bananas, um, but we start off from a base of knowing um, something about water stress and calcium stress and all of those
So
things.
so let's talk about bananas or tomatoes.
Yes,
So okay,
yes, yeah,
let's talk about tomatoes because that might be easier.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
you have a field of tomatoes, but
Yes,
you don't have to record from every plant.
no,
You just
no.
get a few of them, right? I mean,
Yeah.
because obviously there could be there's some variability among plants, but
Yes,
is
there
that
is they are individuals, and recording at that frequency, of course, the noise exacerbates the problem of individuality, and so we tend to ask for a sample of 8 individuals in any population. Doesn't
Mhm.
really matter. So if it's a field of tomatoes and all the tomatoes are roughly the same, if we measure 8, we'll get a pretty good view of the field.
Yeah. Okay. So you have your 8 plants of tomatoes.
Yes.
You record.
Yeah.
Okay. So and you have your AI model.
Yes.
You got some connectivity to the, I mean, which
Yes.
I guess depends on where the farm is because a lot of times,
Exactly. Yeah.
and we
Yeah.
can get to that maybe later in like how do
Yeah.
you do it in rural locations, but
Yes.
you get all that data and the model is going to spit out something.
Yes.
What
Yes.
is that the model is going to tell you other than there is a calcium deficiency, but I think it's more than that.
I think, well, no, even I think telling the farmer that the crops are stressed. I've got
Mhm.
farmers are demanding customers. When we started, we went to see them and said, "Are you interested in having information from your plants?" And
Mhm.
I'd say they didn't miss a beat. They said, "Absolutely, it's fundamental to improving farming to get feedback from plants." And we said, fine, we'll give you a technology which enables you to get what information you want. They said, as long as you tell us when the plants are stressed, that will be great. And so you'd come back the next year and say, okay, we've got technology. We think it can tell you when your tomatoes are stressed. What do you think? And they'd say, it's useless. We need to know why they're stressed. And so
Right.
then you have to go away and come back and say, is it calcium or is it water or is it temperature or is it humidity? And so we came back and we told them that, and being farmers and being tough businessmen, they said that's useless. They said we need to know in advance when they're going to be stressed. So I think this information is useful to them, and they are constantly looking for ways to avoid. If you think about it this way, you've probably got, let's say, 150 days. In the tomato, it'll be a bit longer. Let's say you've got 250 days of growing during the season. If
Mhm.
you have 10 days of that where the crop is stressed and is not producing the tomatoes that you want, if it's focused on adapting or trying to survive a disease or dealing with a nutrient deficiency, that's big bucks for you.
Yeah.
So getting that's the information they want. Give us the information that enables us to stop having bad periods during the growth cycle, and that really means dollars to the farmer.
Can you also detect disease? Because
Yes,
that's actually, I mean,
yeah,
it's stress, okay, fine. But then again,
yes,
what's causing, and it
yes,
might not be just a deficiency, it might be disease.
yes. The bananas is really well. There's a very interesting one in tomatoes, and there has been for I'm going to guess for 10 years as tomato brown rugose virus. It's a virus. It's been affecting tomatoes now for it's been spreading around the world for 10 years. You can't visit a tomato greenhouse
Mhm.
anymore. You have to get dressed up. You have to put a spacesuit on. You have to disinfect yourself. So there's lots of diseases happening in agriculture. Bananas are particularly susceptible to fusarium and a disease called black sigatoka. And our agricultural industry is dealing with these things without it. Somehow, nobody ever gets very interested in these things, and they're massive, massive problems, hidden problems, really. And we're helping by giving the farmer earlier diagnosis, and that enables them to do things like, let's say, in bananas, the fusarium is they used to expect that banana tree over 20 years would maybe give you 15 harvests. With fusarium, it'll only give you three harvests. So it's a disaster. And so if they see a tree with fusarium, they dig it out and they take it away and they burn it. But if you could have earlier diagnosis, then that digging out process would just be much more effective. The disease wouldn't have spread by the time you took your phytosanitary measures, as they call
As a gardener, I know how important early detection is.
it.
And that's absolutely crucial because but
Yeah.
once you have the full blown disease, you see it.
Yes.
I mean, you don't
Yes,
need anybody
exactly.
to tell you.
Exactly. You don't need a machine learning model for that. No.
Yeah, that would be like overkill. You want to know ahead of time. I mean,
Ahead of
that
time,
is
yeah.
that is really the crucial part because
That
there
is
are. I mean,
exactly, yeah. That is the nub of it. If you take mildew, the mildew spore lands on the leaf,
mhm,
and then the symptoms will appear after roughly, it's quite fast, after about 10 days. We can see the plant's mechanisms, the plant's defense mechanisms kick into gear 2 days after the spore lands. And so you can give the farmer that 8 days earlier notice to get on and spray or give a proper bio treatment or a biostimulant to try and help. So you stand a chance of rescuing a disastrous situation. And let me give you another example. Um, apricots, apricot trees. With global warming, they're tending to notice the warming coming earlier,
mhm,
and so they wake up a bit earlier. And then
mhm,
there's the late frost, and the late frost destroys the crop. And we have a farmer up here in the Alps who had lost his crop 5 out of the last 7 years to late frost. The trees had woken up early, flowers, frost, death, nothing. And so he said to us, please tell me when the trees are woken up, because no point me treating the trees if the treatment isn't going to work. So we showed him uh, almost to the hour when the trees woke up, and so he was able to use these expensive treatments to delay flowering in the crop, and therefore to avoid the risk of
mhm.
late frost.
So this is very actionable suggestion. So it's not
Yes,
just recording whatever
yes,
for
yeah, yes,
intellectual purposes.
yes,
So, what is the business case? Because this is what we always ask,
yes,
is it worth it? Obviously, there is a cost in doing this, but
yes.
there's also a benefit. So, how do you go about it, and what's kind of the business model? Because obviously, the farmer would have to make an investment.
Yes, yes. Let's
How
let's
is that
split.
working?
Yeah, yeah. Let's split that into two parts from a farmer's perspective. There are some things that the farmer can using our technology can right size. So in other words, they tend, because they don't know, they have no information, that they're just using historical inherited information, multi-generational farmers. They tend to overwater, and they tend to over-apply fertilizer, and then tend to over-apply pesticides. And with our information, we could maybe reduce the amount of nitrogen that they put on the fields, which has a huge knock-on advantage in terms of not polluting
Mhm.
water courses with nitrogen. We can use a little bit less. So there's a kind of, if you like, there's a kind of recurring, easy to model. If we can save them one spray, let's say they spray 8 times a year, if we can reduce that by 2 sprays, again, it's big dollars. So that's a relatively easy thing to model. Then there's the risk question, and that's a much tougher um, uh, uh, business case to make. But for the apricot farmer on the mountain in the mountains, he hasn't lost his crop since he started using our technology, and this is I mean, so that's a pretty serious. It's a bit hard to say it's just peace of mind, but it's real. Avoiding these catastrophic failures.
Yeah. So um, let's just talk about, from a telecom perspective. What
Yes,
is that the telecom industry should know about this or things like this? Because the problem is that I'm sure that, beyond plants, there's a lot of things going on, but,
yes,
you've been working with farmers.
yes,
But you also need to work with the telecoms, and so the
yes.
telecom has to, or is it necessary? Does the telecom industry have a role to play in it, or the farmers just use whatever technology is available and be done with it?
I think there are a few really interesting examples where the telecom industry has actively engaged with agriculture. I think the best one that comes to mind is TELUS Ag in Canada. TELUS Ag is TELUS, which is a division of TELUS, has really gone out. It took the view that connectivity in agriculture was an important um, uh, business opportunity, and it actively went out and acquired agricultural uh, startups and wanted to learn about agriculture. In general, the coverage, and then you get into different countries. In general, if you look at somewhere like the Netherlands, there are no one of the things I used to say in telecoms is in Europe, everywhere is somewhere. If you go to North America, most places are nowhere. There's just no coverage on a lot of American, or certainly not Canadian farms. And so in these, or in Ecuador, we're doing quite a lot of cut flowers business in Ecuador or Colombia. And there we're turning. So LoRa is important to us. We're heavy users of LoRa. We're definitely at the upper end of the bandwidth requirement. We're using all the LoRa we can get, and it's this balance between an edge of network device and battery power, and it's got to last a year. And so we've had to make. We'd love there to be a LoRa that was a bit faster and a bit lower energy. So those networks, I think. IoT networks were kind of very fashionable a few years ago. They seem to be a bit less in the press right now, but they're super important to us. Then our next choice is 4G. We use a lot of 4G data SIMs. Awful problems getting SIMs in different countries. You have to have all of the legalistic stuff around that. So some of these operations that are providing global SIMs, they're very interesting to us. And then you come back to Starlink, and uh, that's kind of like our last resort. Is we put up a Starlink connection, so we have LoRa from the plant to the gateway, and then from the gateway to the cloud, we're using all of the usual providers.
So, but you need to have anybody from, like TELUS in Canada has been, yeah, you've been doing a lot of work, but
Yeah.
do you need the TELUS equivalent, or are you just going to go to the farm? I mean, is your relationship with the farmer all you basically need, and maybe you have
Yes. Well, I
farmers?
think that it would be great if the telecoms companies saw agriculture as it's a fundamentally, I think they regard it as a not very important market and a difficult market.
Hmm.
And it would be great if that wasn't the case, and they had specialists who were interested in getting appropriate coverage all across agricultural fields. But let's be honest, it's you know there's not a lot. It's not like providing service to
The
central London.
military.
Yeah,
Well, actually, yeah, military is the biggest
yeah, yeah.
vertical, even though there's not that many use cases
Yes,
public, but in terms of revenues, clearly it's bigger. But on the other hand, but I so I guess that right now your business model, do you work directly with the farmers or
yes.
is that yeah?
So that's a very interesting question. Um, we thought we would, but
Mhm.
but then you realize that there's hundreds of millions of them
Yeah,
across the
exactly.
world, a
Mhm.
lot of them, and we're 18 people, so that's not going to work. And so you have to go into a hidden industry, which is the agricultural distribution industry, which is a very, very curious place. And it varies a lot from country to country. Take the United States, the most
Mhm.
important agricultural power in the world. There isn't a single there isn't a single national agricultural distributor.
Mhm.
Absolutely amazing. Nobody's, in a world where everything's concentrated and aggregation has happened you think in almost every industry. And on the buy side, it has to some extent. You've got the A, B, C, D companies. Are you familiar with this expression, Monica? The A, B, C.
What's
So
that?
there are four companies,
Mhm.
four that control 80% of the world's calories.
Mhm.
ADM, Bungie, Cargill, and the other one who can't remember. The A, B, C, D companies. So on the buy side, and they run the grain elevators and the rail cars, and so they distribute they gather the physical product. But on the sell side to farmers, it's these local distributors, and they're often crop advisors as well, and it's those are the people that we sell to.
Mhm.
Ultimately, they provide the service to the farmers.
So do you think it would be there would be a scope for say operators like Telus or other entities to be just into the this because it's kind of a niche part from a farmer's point of view. They do all
Yes,
sorts they need all sorts of things, and this is another one. So does it make sense or does it make more sense for you to be integrated with the agricultural players
I
or
no,
both? Or
definitely no,
what's the view?
definitely the agricultural players. But I would make this point to you, and think you personally can help us here. Spectrum. Wouldn't it
Mhm,
be great to have spectrum that was focused on agriculture and to have spectrum that really met that need? And I think that would be hugely empowering to uh, to uh, to this important industry because basically nobody cares about agriculture and spectrum. Nobody's even thinking about it. And there was the white space for a little while, and then that all kind of just drifted away and became
mhm.
part of cellular stuff. So I think it would be very cool to think about how you could parcel spectrum up. I love the Wi-Fi story. I love the way this deregulation in the ISM bands led to this extraordinary explosion of efficiency and spectrum reuse inside inside those bands. And maybe that's something you and I should just have
You should,
a glass of wine and think about spectrum for agriculture.
and here what I mean because most of agricultural farms are far out, so there is
Yes.
no. I mean, they are in environments where spectrum is not an issue from a physics point of view because
Yeah.
there's not.
No. No. Yeah.
So, so you just need to be able to use spectrum there.
Yes.
So it's a local use of spectrum, not.
Yes.
It's not like
Yes. I think.
Wi-Fi that is available throughout the country. It's
Yes.
in
Yes.
areas where there is spectrum available.
Yes.
It's just sad that
Yes.
you can't use it.
Yeah. But think of robotic tractors or self-driving tractors
Mhm.
or
Oh, right, right.
a really effective irrigation, those
Mhm.
the pivots that you see as you fly across the US.
Right.
If farmers are farmers are very much inhibited from being connected by lack of appropriate spectrum. And hats off to Elon Musk. The Starlink thing is really the last tool, well, it's a new tool, and I think that agriculture is going to, and I do think that farming is going to be one of the great one of the great chatbot industries. I think that the knowledge that these people have is dying out as more and more people leave agriculture and go into it's a hard life, it's a remote life. So farmers are generally quite old. So that knowledge is dying out. Data but they can get data from companies like ours, but they haven't got a lot of time to do a lot of data interpretation. So I think it's an LLM industry. And so once again, you have this idea of connectivity being potentially a massively important driver of the next agricultural revolution.
No, absolutely. And we know that agriculture is going to be, it's a represent a smaller part of our GDP, but we still have to
Yes.
eat.
Yeah.
So,
It's a yes. The famous
to
phrase
think about
is
GDP doesn't really help us in the sense
yeah.
that not only, and we talk about sovereignty, but we want to not only have to eat, but we would like to have whatever we eat to be produced locally because that would protect us better than
I,
anything else from geopolitical or whatever, or just environment. It's just a waste to get food
the
to
famous the
travel.
famous the famous phrase is where we are all uh, 9 meals from anarchy. And that's true. It's an industry, and I think you make a really profoundly important point. In many of the countries where we live, agriculture is not so important. There are plenty of countries left where it is important, and I think from a geopolitical perspective, when the Ukraine war started, and a little bit now with the Hormuz thing, the fertilizer, the lack of fertilizer became an important thing. And I think it's relevant that the Chinese government is definitely focused on food security. And I thought it was rather hidden recently is DARPA launched a program, a funding program looking for threats to agriculture. Um, so it is you've got this dichotomy that it's less and less important to few employs fewer people, smaller part of the GDP, all of that. But if it goes wrong, uh,
Yeah,
life will be very much more interesting than it is. It will be the curse of living in interesting time.
yeah, no, absolutely. It's really it's a really crucial segment.
Yes.
Now, we could be talking about this forever. It's a really fat what you're doing is really fascinating. But again, so before we close, before I let you go,
Yeah.
what is your message to the telco industry? What is that they should be doing differently to address this? Okay, this is an opportunity, so what should they do?
I think that it's difficult. It's an industry that's difficult to deal with because it hasn't got champions that are focused on telecoms. So I think it's incumbent on the industry to go out and and to try and understand how connectivity could transform things. So I think John Deere is a great example of a company that is trying to have connected tractors. We're trying to have connected plants. So there are these little islands of people who are driven by the need to make farming more data driven, and then for the ability for the farmer to, in a very simple and intuitive way, to access analysis of that data. It is an important industry. The question, I think, the real challenging thing is how does telecoms make money out of agriculture? And I wish I had a good answer for that, and I'm afraid I don't. I think that's the sort of thing that you and I, as I say, should sit down and have a bottle of Italian and think about that.
Absolutely, and we should. But in the meantime, if anybody out there in the audience has any idea or questions, you can talk to Nigel directly. There will be a
Yes,
link to his LinkedIn page, so please do so, or let me do it. And but Nigel, thank you so much. This was absolutely fascinating to learn more about how plants are connected and how they're part of the same network that we
very
operate.
good. Well, thanks for giving me the opportunity, Monica. I hope that your listeners found it interesting, and I definitely want to hear from anybody who's got ideas or questions around this whole topic.
Excellent. And thank you all for listening in. I hope you found it interesting. Keep listening to Sparing Partners and let people know about it.